of allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great, thank you. Members present are Ms. Tara Carr, Selectwoman, Bob Belden, Selectman, and Steve Dunn, First Selectman. Do we have public comment?
Is your mic on?
Yeah, I think so.
Just tap it.
Yeah, it's on.
Just gotta talk into it.
Everything on, great.
With authority.
Public comment, who do we have?
Ernst Vignac, 112 Obtuse Road South. I've been the town's human resource director for the last 10 years. However, I've been more than just an employee. Not only serving as the HR director, but I was also instrumental in running programs in this town that have benefited all of our children. I was terminated without cause on December 7th by Steve Dunn 3 days after he resumed office. During my tenure, I worked with selectmen of all parties, including First Selectman Tinsley, Dunn, and First Selectman woman Carr. As a town employee, my focus was to act with unwavering integrity and honesty, demonstrating loyalty to the town and its taxpayers, and treating every select person and employee with truthfulness and fairness. I did not answer to a clock, but rather to the needs of the position. When required, I would seek advice from counsel or other professionals as needed to ensure that the town and employees' best interest always come first. To be terminated abruptly and without cause within 3 days of Mr. Dunn's taking office was a shock because there is no good reason for it. Why should Mr. Dunn's first order of business be to terminate me? I believe I know why. It was retaliation, plain and simple, motivated by politics and personal interest. One example of Mr. Dunn's retaliation was that he wanted to be included in the pension when he left office in 21. I enforced the rules of this town. He didn't like it, and it was his mission when he returned to office to retaliate against me. My termination never was about performance. There were never any complaints about my performance from him, Mr. Tinsley, or Ms. Carr. In my 10 years as an HR director, I successfully negotiated union contracts, recovered over $150,000 in incorrectly processed pension funds. I transitioned the town and Board of Ed insurance to the state partnership plan, saving the town millions, and administered the town and Board of Ed pension, 457 and 401 plans. Considering the critical nature of my responsibilities, I ask you, Mr. Dunn, who is currently qualified to oversee these essential duties? When I asked Mr. Dunn why he was terminating me, he had no legitimate response. He told me to immediately remove everything from my office and not to return. Treating a 10-year dedicated employee like that was unacceptable, unprofessional, and I know what the taxpayers' employees of this town would consider inappropriate. When I told him I had a right to appeal his decision based on the charter regulations, he told me not to bother, that he had spoken to Mr. Belden and that Mr. Belden agreed with that decision. However, in the News Times article, it was reported that Mr. Belden stated he was unaware of Mr. Dunn's decision to terminate me. So who's not telling the truth here? Since my departure, I've received unwavering support from employees and residents. They have expressed their anger over the perceived injustice and unfairness of my termination. Mr. Dunn, you advised me not to appeal your decision because it would be a waste of my time, because you said you had Mr. Belden's vote. Well, does he, Mr. Belden? Because my livelihood and future is in your hands. Today I'm appealing Mr. Dunn's reckless decision. If the board rubber stamps this decision, then I have no other choice but to hold all the parties responsible for this and accountable. All I wanted to do was to serve the good people and employees of this town that I love. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ellen Gallo. As a resident and taxpayer in Brookfield for almost 40 years, I'm questioning why Mr. Dunn's first order of business was, as first selectman, was to fire a 10-year exemplary employee, the head of HR, with no reason, and without your other selectmen being aware of this, and with no immediate plans to hire a new one. One would think you would want their input in this matter, especially Tara Carr's, who had worked with Fern for the last 2 years. The residents and taxpayers have the right to know your reasons for this unexplainable termination. Mr. Dunn, you also worked with Fern for 6 years without problems, and many, many people I have spoken with, including town employees, can't help but feel Fern's termination was not for the good of our town, but was retaliation for her involvement in the internal pension investigation. What came out was that you had gone to her after you had been defeated in your run for another term, and during that investigation, she simply told the truth as to what had occurred. And there were other things during your 6 years as our first selectman that were questionable, even an incident with Mr. Rooney, your Board of Finance chair, that you might have been retaliating against her for. Another question involving more recent actions is, how did the newspaper get information regarding Tara's request for sick time after the election? That should have been no one's business except for hers. Very few people had access to that information, and what mole from Town Hall had that access and leaked that and other information to the press? And was Miss Carr's request for time off really front page news? Just too much drama during your last term and your recent term as our first selectman that seems to have no bearing on taking care of the state of this town, and seems to have much to do with your own needs and your personal feelings toward a top employee in town. There really are way more important things going on in this town that need attention than the termination of an employee 3 or 4 days after you were sworn in. Fern cares more about our town than you seem to, and has done more good for this town than most, with no hidden agenda. I sincerely hope that the typical political garbage that goes on in this country, I just lost my spot, can stop in this town, and that our residents can get some answer to the questionable acts going on here. I know that Fern has appealed your decision, Steve, so it seems it will all come down to you, Mr. Belden. Since we know where Steve stands, and based on Tara's recommendation, we know where she stands. Let's hope, for the sake of our town, you follow advice given to you. Listen well. Do the right thing. Make the right decision. Mr. Belden, please, again, advice given to you. Take the high road. Thank you.
Sorry. Hi, my name is Linda Diorio. I've been a resident and homeowner in this beautiful town for 35 years. The following is a letter the employees of the town wanted to submit to the Board of Selectmen, but want to remain anonymous due to fear of retaliation if they identify themselves. We, the employees of the town of Brookfield, write to express our profound dismay and concern regarding the recent termination of our long-serving Human Resources Director, Fern Smenyak. As dedicated individuals committed to the betterment of our community, we feel compelled to bring to your attention the grave injustice that has transpired. Fern has been an instrumental and integral part of the town's administration for almost 10 years, contributing significantly to the establishment of a fair and inclusive work environment. It is with great distress that we learned about the abrupt decision to terminate her employment, a decision that appears to lack transparency and fairness. We understand that personal matters may be sensitive and complex, but we cannot remain silent when we witness what we perceive as a gross miscarriage of justice. Fern consistently demonstrated professionalism, dedication, and compassion in her role, earning the respect and admiration of her employees. This abrupt determination has left us bewildered, questioning the principles of fairness and due process that should govern such actions. Moreover, we are deeply troubled by the message of fear and uncertainty resulting from the first selectman's actions during the first 3 days of office. It is our sincere hope that the Board of Selectmen will recognize the importance of fostering a workplace culture built on trust, fairness, and open communication. Regrettably, we find ourselves compelled to request that our identities remain anonymous in this matter, as fear is making it difficult to speak openly in support of Fern. We trust that you will understand the gravity of our concerns and respect our need for confidentiality. In conclusion, we implore the Board of Selectmen to consider the decision to terminate Fern Smenyak and conduct a thorough and impartial review of the circumstances surrounding this matter. The employees of Brookfield deserve a workplace that upholds the principles of fairness, justice, and transparency. Thank you for your attention to this matter. We sincerely hope that you will address our concerns promptly and take the necessary steps to rectify what we perceive as a significant injustice.
Good evening. Harry Shaker, 87 Long Meadow Hill Road. I'm going to change subjects for a minute. I'm here just to talk about two young men, Liam Eam and Chris Donnelly, who are on tonight's agenda for appointment for two zoning meetings. I had the privilege of working with Liam for the last probably 4 or 5 years on different campaigns and different projects, fundraisers, and I've got to meet and know Chris Donnelly over the last 5 months. These are two good, hard-working young men with passion to serve Brookfield, and I'm sure that in the future we're going to be seeing them. I can't speak more highly about the two of them and this appointment. Thank you.
Good evening, Eve Sturdivant, 3 Rachel La Farm Road in Brookfield. I've got the big old target on my back and I'm totally good with it. I decided yesterday, after speaking with several town employees and talking to residents, that I started a petition that unfortunately I had to work. I didn't get to print it out to give you Bob, but it was to Selectman Bob Belden keep Fern S. employed as Human Resource Director. On 10/17/2023, during the first Selectmen's debate, Mr. Dunn had stated that under his command for the past 6 years, he had had an excellent work environment with a great human resources department. Those employees were rewarded, appreciated, and cared for. You had good people who did good jobs. Additionally, you also spoke highly of Bob Belden, which I agree with. You said that he was the type of person who listens, and he makes up his own mind despite politics. And I can attest to that because Bob and I have worked together. I've known him for 23 years. We don't always agree on matters, but at the end, we walk away and you make level-headed decisions. So I am going to read out loud because I don't have a copy in the record. In less than 24 hours, I have received 144 signatures backing this petition. This is a plea to Brookfield Selectman Bob Belden to vote and keep Fern Sminak on as our Town Human Resources Director. Bob has always been fair when it comes to policies and procedures concerning employment issues. The firing of Fern was in retaliation for doing her job and following the letter of the law. When questioned by attorneys regarding Steve Dunn's use of town funds the day after he lost the 2021 election to Tara Carr, Ms. Smirnak told the truth when questioned by town attorneys. She did her job. She did nothing wrong. During her 10 years as Human Resource Director, Ms. S. received nothing but stellar reviews. In addition to being an employee of our town, she dedicated and volunteered for 30 years running our children's programs for basketball. I'm sorry. Where'd you go? I know where it should be. Programs for basketball, softball, and baseball. First Selectman Dunn specifically stated to Ms. S. that he has Bob Belden's vote and not to bother appealing to the Board of Selectmen. Many town employees stated they are on Ms. S.'s side, but cannot speak for fear of losing their jobs. May I email that to you, Bob?
Yes. You could send me the signatures as well, just a list of who signed it.
Michelle Berg, 8 Stony Farm Lane. Fern Smenyak moved to Brookfield in 1988, where she established herself as a pillar in our community while raising her 3 sons. She has coached and mentored hundreds of children of Brookfield while volunteering countless selfless hours to sports teams and local organizations. Fern has worked hard, dedicated herself, and is well respected in the town of Brookfield. She deserves to be treated better than this. Fern is an outstanding leader in her position of Human Resource Director for the town of Brookfield. She has been steadfast with great success in her position. I know firsthand her professionalism and exceptional work ethic as I once worked for the town of Brookfield. Due to these unfortunate circumstances, the morale has plummeted amongst town employees at Town Hall. They are fearful of retaliation and their own job security. This has really shaken the confidence of town employees and their trust in our current first selectman. The firing of Fern Smenyak is totally uncalled for, unlawful, and unjust. This is an embarrassment to our beloved town. Fern has been an incredible asset to our community of Brookfield. This firing reeks of retaliation, desperation, and deceit. Do the right thing. Restore Fern's position. Let's get her back to work, restore integrity in Town Hall, and move Brookfield forward. I stand with Fern.
Evening, members of the Board of Selectmen. Matt Grimes, 11 Orchard Street, Brookfield. Would like to take a minute just to thank everybody here and those in the community who have been more than kind to my mother, my brother, my sister, and me in the 3 weeks since my father suddenly passed. He gave quite a bit to this town over time, and this was a community loss. Was made very clear to us during that time. But the real reason I'm here tonight is to talk about the 2 young gentlemen on your agenda, Liam Anee and Chris Donnelly. One's a Brookfield High School graduate who's at UConn. One's a Brookfield High School graduate who's at WestConn. They both have volunteered countless hours to the community. Chris through his military service as well. And, you know, one things that happens, whether we have a Republican administration or a Democrat administration, we always seem to need more volunteers around Brookfield. So you've got 2 21-year-old gentlemen raising their hands, stepping up. They've both done their homework, Chris for the Board of Assessment Appeals, Liam for the ZBA, and I think that if they can get a unanimous vote from this Board of Selectmen, I think the town of Brookfield would be very, very pleased to have these 2 fine gentlemen in those positions. So I hope you'll vote to support them. Thank you very much.
Rich Saluga, 32 Great Heron Lane. I have a couple of quick things. One, I would ask that you move agenda item number 10 to the beginning of the meeting, since many people here are involved in that particular agenda item. If in fact you're not going to do that, could you at least have the courtesy to tell us whether or not that's going to be held as a public discussion or an executive session? Thank you. Second thing, on item number 7C with the Brookfield Fire Department, I don't know if the math is accurate or the numbers are accurate, but you have a cost of $317K and a revenue of $316K. That leaves a balance of $1,113, not $11,000. So if somebody can check that out. Third thing, I would speak against the tax abatement proposal that's in your packet tonight. One, because it seems like the trade-off for the tax abatement is 36 parking spaces. I'm not sure that's a fair trade-off, especially when 10 of those 36 parking spaces are in the back of a building that's not even constructed yet, and it's away from the Greenway. So people, if they park there for the Greenway, would have to walk through the parking lot, around the building, around the second building, around another parking area, just to get out of the area to get on the Greenway. So I don't think that's a fair trade. Lastly, I want to speak about the issue that many people here are talking about. I work at the YMCA, and we have core values there: caring, honesty, respect, and responsibility. I think Fern Smenyak exemplifies and demonstrates those 4 core values. And I would throw out a challenge to you folks. Mr. Belding, your name is on a plaque at the Y as one of the supporters, major supporters of the Y, I would think that you support those core values. Mr. Dunn, I believe that you were involved in supporting the Brookfield track years ago, and I'm sure you want to instill those values in our young people. And Ms. Carr, I believe that you modeled and demonstrated those values in your service, both in the military and in your public service here in town. I can't help but think that if this injustice, which I believe terminating Ms. Smenyak is an injustice, I think if that's allowed to stand, then the question I would ask you is, what are you teaching young people? You know, that because you don't like somebody, you're going to take action against them? Because somebody followed the rules, you're going to take action against them? And Ms. Smenyak was not the only one who spoke to the issue of the pension years ago, 2 years ago. Ms. Marin spoke about it, Mr. Lucas spoke about it, Mr. Mattson spoke about it, all in the same vein as Ms. Smenyak. Are we going to fire them as well? If not, then I believe that you should reconsider the decision and reinstate Ms. Smenyak. Thank you.
Jim Fisher, 12 Airmont Circle. I met Fern approximately 20 years ago. My kids both went through the basketball camp at Park and Rec. I had the pleasure of coaching under her for a couple of years. My daughter was a ref in high school for her. When reading all this, I guess I have questions about it, and I clearly see many people have questions about it. And my concern is, I'm thinking back to the debate when there was a lot of talk in the last couple of years about employees and how our employees are leaving to other towns for more money. And everything I've heard about Fern, everything I know about her when I was involved with coaching, she was fair with parents, she was understanding. I don't know if you've ever coached children in this town, you don't know how difficult it is dealing with parents. She did that. It probably prepped her for working in this town hall. But to say we're going to get rid of as far as I can tell, a stellar employee because of some, pardon my French, pissing match maybe going on behind the scenes, it doesn't really sit well with people. We're going to get rid of an employee when we can't get good employees because they're going someplace else for more money, and we're going to fire her because of what? Now, whether or not we're going to find that answer out or not, I'm going to start putting some questions on you, Bob, I guess. I'll say, first of all, well, you're part of the team. There's 3 people up there. There's 3 votes. We know how the 2 votes are going. So now we could say, Bob, it's all on you. It's all on your integrity, what's going to happen with this. And you're going to have to live with that decision. If there's already a petition with 144 people's name on it, there could probably be more in another couple of weeks. This is not really the way to start a new term of selectmen. This is really a bad, bad smell. I mean, take a whiff of that cheese. That cheese smells bad. Now, I'm going to say there's a couple of things you could do. You could correct this right now. Steve Dunn could say, you know what? I'm a bigger man. I made a mistake. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I'll throw it out there. Why not? Be the bigger man. Then let's start the term of your office saying, hell's bells, I made a mistake. I'm sorry, Fern, you get your job back. I don't know if that's going to happen. That would be my wish. So, Bob, you'd be safe. You don't have to get involved. I don't know if that's going to happen, Bob, but it's going to rest on your shoulders. And that's a big choice that you're going to have to make starting the tenure of this, your first time being a selectman. That's going to be on you. And it's a big question. Now, the only thing I can equate this to, it almost sounds like a Donald Trump situation. You're fired, Fern, because you did something wrong to piss off the boss. I don't like that, and the people of the town of Brookfield don't like that. So I'm asking the Board of Selectmen, do the right thing. Hire her back, please.
All right. Austin Montero, 17 Dairy Farm Drive. So 3 points tonight. First and foremost, I'm here in support of Fern and what seems to be her unjust firing as HR Director of 10 years by the first selectman on day 3 of this new administration. You know, you guys ran on bringing back decency, civility, and experienced leadership to this town hall. So the question I have is firing somebody with what seems without cause decent? Is it civil? is this behavior is the exact opposite of the campaign promise that you guys made to the people of Brookfield. The exact opposite. I hope the correct position is made tonight, and Fern is, for lack of better words, given her rightful job back. So let's make that happen. Let's be bigger people. Part 2, the abatement at 731 Federal Road. The previous gentleman mentioned this. I too am against this. Hardworking Brookfielders should not be paying for projects of developers. The town needs this tax revenue, or the developer needs to come to the table with a whole lot more to this equation than just a couple parking spots. I've driven by there, peak time, off time, like the previous gentleman said, they're in the back corners. It's the value to me. I don't see the value there of the abatement that will be given. And then just part 3, regarding one of the email correspondence from the Craft Center director asking our town for another $200,000. I hope we look into this. This was an email. I hope this is a no, based on the fact that the director of the Craft Center and his heavy involvement in local politics, and essentially what he did was segregate and bias children, healthy children, who were not COVID vaccinated for years. There's also still a mask mandate in place, it's on their website today, for, again, healthy children. I think that is wrong. The Craft Center, as we know, is a nonprofit 501c3b, and by definition cannot be involved in political activity at all, yet its director is maybe the heaviest involved person in our town. At large, I'm a supporter of the Craft Center. It's a staple in Brookfield. I am for it. I would advise against giving them money until their actions change and apologies are made, or there's a change in the director. Also, for any funds in the future granted to the Craft Center, we need and we should require published financials so the town taxpayers of Brookfield know exactly where this said, in this case, $200,000 is going. That's all tonight. Thank you very much, Fern. I wish you luck. Thank you.
Tony Carr, 54 Indian Trail. I want to briefly talk about 2 subjects. The first is a suggestion made in last month's Board of Selectmen meeting to have a 911 commission or planning committee in town. Any veteran or survivor who was cheated to death, been shot at, or has lost limbs, eyesight, or close friends or family as a result of the global war on terrorism that extended from the September 11th attacks knows the event has forever changed America. But the time to put together a committee or commission is 20+ years too late, and not what the town should be investing money, time, or effort on. A dark and somber day in the history of our nation notwithstanding, we aren't rushing to set up committees to commemorate the attack on Pearl Harbor, the tremendous loss of life, and the bombings in Riyadh and Dhahran, or the World Trade Center in the 90s, Sandy Hook, the closing of the embassy in Saigon, or other historic events because they are indelible. We do not need a special commission to tell us that private organizations have been doing a fantastic job in ensuring we don't forget significant events, and our first responders also do a tremendous outreach to allow the community to show its support. The idea for a special committee sounds self-indulgent, and simply pointing out that another town in the area has a committee is not compelling enough to spend Brookfield's time on it. We all can show our respect, gratitude, and deference without more government and a special town committee being involved. Last year's town hall commemoration was poignant, intimate, and beautiful. We're already doing a great job honoring those who sacrificed, so please reconsider who we are serving when we set up committees. They should not be used to feed one citizen's ego. Second, the Board of Selectmen will hear nominations about a Parks and Rec alternate vacancy. I ask that the Board of Selectmen perhaps delay any appointments until they are able to assess all possible candidates. Candidates that are officers or board members in any money-making, revenue-generating organization like Pop Warner, BBA, BBSA, Brookfield Soccer, or any other organization that can benefit by being on a board for Parks and Rec creates a conflict of interest. And that can't be the way we do business in town. Because they will be in a position to determine what sports activities are offered by Parks and Rec and other salient issues that would potentially put an organization, nonprofit or otherwise, in a position to affect town policy and benefit. The Parks and Rec Commission should, with guidance from the Board of Selectmen, amend their bylaws to rule out any any members that may have affiliation with sports organizations. Thank you very much.
Okay, that ends our public comment. Thank you, everyone. I would make a motion, the chief of our fire department has a meeting at the fire department to attend, so I would make a motion that we move item 6C, the Brookfield Volunteer Fire Company reimbursement for ambulance, up on the agenda to now. Do I have a second on that?
It should be 7C.
Oh, I'm sorry, 7C. I keep on saying 6. 7C, thank you. Do I have a second?
Sure, second.
Bob seconds, so any discussion about moving it? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so we will move that up. As Mr. Suluga mentioned, there was an error in the calculation. The ambulance 18-3 was replaced in December 22 at a cost of $327,113. Unfortunately, the 2 was replaced with a 1. The town has agreed to pay 100% of the cost, but only approved the budget of $316,000. The Brookfield Volunteer Fire Company paid the $11,113 balance, for which they are now seeking reimbursement from the town. I would make note that the fire company did receive ARPA funds, but they did return $5,623 of their ARPA allocation last year because the costs for the projects they were doing came in less than originally budgeted. We could transfer that, but unfortunately, ARPA money requires going to a town meeting. I don't want to call a town meeting for $5,623. We could pay it through the general fund, where this month, where they returned $9,000 in honor and stipends for their volunteers, but this is a capital purchase. It is not an operating expense. So I think what we should do is pay for this with the capital non-recurring fund on unallocated fund balance. We have closed out several projects in the last year that total about $58,599. So the motion I am making is that the town reimburse Brookfield Volunteer Fire Company the $11,113 additional cost of the ambulance with unallocated fund balance in the capital non-recurring fund, and refer that to the Board of Finance for consideration and approval. Do I have a second on that?
I'll second.
Second. Any further discussion on this issue?
Have you received appropriate documentation on the actual expenditure and why
Yes.
why they overran?
Yes.
So what was the cause of the overrun?
The cause was, if I remember correctly, Andy, do you want to come up there? Can you come up to the,
The fire company put the initial $10,000 deposit down on it several years before to get a spot, and the 1,100 overrun was some electronics that went up during the price of the project. That was it. So it's really only like an 1,100.
So when we did the appropriation,
No,
we hadn't
forgot.
taken into
They
account
forgot the
that
deposit.
10,000?
Yeah, going forward, we have it all set for the next one. So.
Okay.
All right.
so basically you had made the deposit but forgot they asked for the whole
Correct.
allocation, including that deposit?
Correct.
Because
Yeah,
it was a
because
couple months later when you
later.
made the
Yes.
request. Okay.
So wait, what's the 1,100, Andy?
11,000.
So it's 11,000. The 10,000 was for the deposit that was done initially, and there were some overruns on the project for like some electronic equipment that the price changed during the course of the project for like COVID and stuff like that. We've been encountering those with our fire trucks and everything else. You start, the change order here, change order there, and
I thought I heard you say 1,100, and when you do the math on what's written here, it's
No.
$1,100 difference.
yeah,
Just wanted to
1,100.
be sure.
Yeah, so 1,100. It's 11,000. It's 10,000 for the deposit,
And
and
$1,100.
$1,100 for change orders or some things that change.
And we have all the substantiation for this, receipts and everything, Marcia, or?
I believe this hasn't come to finance yet. It's with Steve, but I believe Steve has it. I know you have it.
Yeah, we have all the stuff.
So
Yep.
where'd you get the information you just stated?
From Andy.
Yeah, we submitted it.
That says Marcia on it.
Oh, I said so what he just stated, I gave the information on the overages, or the underages of
Projects that we gave back money
Yeah.
over the last couple of months.
So we can have a substantive discussion on this.
Correct. We returned about $14,000, I think, in the last. Yeah.
Okay.
So who's keeping track of all that money coming and going and?
Our Chief
We are. It's
Financial
in the-
Officer.
It's in the reports that you have tonight.
She provides reports to this board and to other boards of what's going on. Any questions from you, Bob?
Sure she does.
Well, I just would like to, I guess, as a discussion item.
Sure.
I think we ought to amend our motion saying pending our town controller receiving all of the detailed documentation.
I would second that.
Absolutely, because you have it, so I just
Yeah.
pass it on.
I just think that is a fundamental, when we ask for money, the town controller needs all the documentation in her hands.
I agree with
So
you.
I've
think
always
that's
felt
very good
strongly
point.
about that.
I agree. So I'll amend the motion.
We have to vote on the amendment first, so,
So do I have a second on the amendment?
yes.
Yes. Any further discussion on the amendment to the motion? All in favor?
Of the amendment? Aye.
So the motion is amended to read that this will be approved by the Board of, hopefully, the Board of Selectmen will approve or not approve. Or if the Board of Selectmen approves this motion, then it will not be sent to the Board of Finance until such time as all the supporting documentation is provided to the Director of Finance. Are you comfortable with that
Yes.
amendment?
Yes.
Okay, that's what, all those in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Well,
Aye?
I thought we just
We
did
just
that.
voted on the amendment, so
We're just
you have
voting
to.
on the amendment.
No, we just vote on the amended motion.
Yeah. Okay, so we have an amended motion. All those in favor of the amended motion, please.
Well, can we have discussion on the amended
Sure, you
motion?
want to have more discussion?
So
Sure.
when do you need the money, Andy?
Whenever you guys can give it to us. We're owed it, I mean, it's not, I don't need it tomorrow, but, you know, we have projects coming up, so.
Any further discussion?
Tara, was there a reason you're worried about the timing?
Well, if we have to wait for the substantiation of
Well,
the
that sounds like that's
documentation-
relatively easy, so
Yeah,
that's,
I'm not- no.
that's,
You've got
I
it,
think
so-
the real timeline issue will be getting into the Board of
It's a
Finance.
couple of months, whatever, it's just,
No, we ought to
you have
get
to- yeah.
that, we ought to do that tomorrow, so we can go to the Board
Yeah,
of Finance.
yeah, it's-
ASAP, so. When is the Board of Finance meeting?
Wednesday.
Wednesday, okay.
So if you can get it to us by tomorrow, or Wednesday morning.
You
we'll
have
get
it.
To the Board of
If
Finance.
you have it, just
on
give it to
Wednesday.
Marcia.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have all the paperwork,
Okay.
Lou submitted it with the request.
Okay.
Can you
that makes
email it
sense.
to me, please? I'd like to see that.
I'm sorry,
I mean, if I'm voting on it, I'd like to see it.
you'd like to see what?
The documentation that supports the transfers of these funds and what we're paying.
So you want to table this until our next meeting?
No, you made the amended motion to
Right.
provide the substantiating documentation.
You just like to
Right.
see it?
Right.
Yeah.
Sure.
Do you
Oh,
need
no,
to
we
see it,
would
do you
send
need
it
to
to
see
the
it,
Board of
do you need to
Selectmen.
see it before you vote, or?
I mean, before Wednesday, if they have it prepared, just include me in an email, that'd be great.
Oh, absolutely, we'll do that.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
That's a fair request.
Yeah, it's a very fair request. Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Andy. Okay, we move back to our normal agenda. Announcements. Coffee with the community will be held on the 27th of January from 9 to 10 at the new Brookfield Market and Deli, located at 277 Wisconsin Road. We encourage everybody to stop by and visit. Sign up for the Spotlight newsletter and Everbridge emergency notifications at brookfieldct.gov, and you can just hit the subscribe icon. Please follow the Town of Brookfield, Connecticut Emerging Management Facebook page. We'll be updating that periodically for everyone. Vacancies on our boards and commissions include 2 on the Arts Commission, 1 alternate on the Conservation Commission, 1 on the Economic Development Board, 2 on the Energy Advisory Board. On Inland Wetlands, there's 1 regular and 2 alternate positions available. On the Library Board of Trustees, there's 1 position. On Parks and Rec Commission, there's 1 alternate available. The WPCA, there's 1 alternate. Youth Commission, we have 2 alternates and 1 non-voting youth member. We'd really like to get a youth member to join. Zoning Board of Appeals, there are 2 alternate positions open. Zoning Commission, there's 1 open. And Zoning Citation Hearing Officers, there's 1 position available. Please go through your local political party. If you're a Republican or a Democrat, or if you choose so, you can come directly to the First Selectman's office and make application for those positions. We encourage everybody to come volunteer. Correspondence addressed to the BOS, we have emails from Norma Jean Makoto, from Christina Cumberton, from Howard Lasser, from Ron Jaffe, from Aaron Zimmer, from Kurt Timmerman, from Steve Dunn, and from Fern Smenyak, and those are attached to the agenda. I would make a motion that we add one recommendation that came from Aaron Zimmer to today's agenda from he's the chairman of the Brookfield Democratic Commission. He has made a recommendation on behalf of the commission that Curtis Timmerman be appointed as a regular member of the zoning commission. And I make a motion that we add that to the documentation. Do I have a second? Correspondence.
I'm second.
Second. Any discussion on that?
Yeah, I have discussion. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 other emails that came to the Board of Selectmen that you should probably also include.
If you look through the agenda, you'll see that there are a number of different attachments and emails that are attached by subject.
I'm talking about an email from Teddy Berner in opposition to the Iroquois pipeline expansion, an email from Stephanie Knecht, same thing, opposition to the Iroquois pipeline expansion, an email from Matt Grimes about the 911 commission. That was sent on 12/13. There's an email between Steve Dunn, myself, and Bob Belden about ex officio positions. There's an email from Christine Pelskar on the 21st in opposition to the Iroquois pipeline expansion. And there's an email from a gentleman named Mike Carroll from the 21st about Northrop Cemetery.
I'm not aware of a couple of those. Cynthia? Okay. We will check that and we will add those to the agenda for next month if those are not made it to this one.
I just want to say that there's a difference between sending an email to the BOS, which is Board of Selectmen,
Correct.
and First Selectmen. If it was sent to the First Selectmen email address, it does not get put into
That's
the
correct.
correspondence. And I do have a lot of emails that are directed to First Selectmen.
Right.
So I just want to point out that there's a difference.
Yeah, just for clarification purposes, if something is addressed to the first selectman or to Mr. Belden or to Ms. Carr, we don't add that to the Board of Selectmen because I get literally hundreds of emails addressed to me, and I do not add them to the Board of Selectmen agenda. We would literally have hundreds of them attached here. If it's addressed to the Board of Selectmen, then we do include it. So and you're saying, Cynthia, that's the reason they...
I'm saying I don't know that. I'm just saying that I have
That makes
First
good.
Selectmen emails that I do get. I have an abundance of.
Okay.
They may have been forwarded there.
Okay, so we will go back and double check and see if there are any further correspondence addressed to the Board of Selectmen, and we will add them to the next meeting if we need to. Okay, we're back to our...
Are you going to bring the item forward that Mr. Saluga mentioned or no?
No, we're not. So we have before us a motion to add the communication from Mr. Zimmer to the Board of Selectmen to the correspondence. Do I have a second on that?
Second.
Second. Any further discussion?
I seconded it before, by the way.
Yeah, I know. I just want to make sure because we got kind of off on a little tangent here. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adding that correspondence, say aye. Aye, carries 3-0. Okay. Our monthly financial update is next. Ms. Marion, could you give us
All
your
right,
update,
for
please?
2023, the audited financial statements are on the website. If you go to the website and look at
Oh,
reports.
wait a minute. I'm sorry, I missed one.
You skipped right past it.
I
You got to
skipped
the
right
monthly
past
and
it.
agenda items.
Jay, is Jay here? Jay's here. Yes, Jay, sorry. I missed one agenda item, the Still River Greenway presentation. I apologize, Jay. Would you come down and make that presentation, and then we'll go back through?
Hi, I'm Jay Annis. I am chairman, 12 Kimberly Drive, Brookfield. I am chairman of the Still River Greenway Ad Hoc Committee for the expansion of the Greenway. It's been about 2 years since I've presented any update on the Greenway, and with the new Board of Selectmen, I thought it would be a good time to actually do that, and we also have some interesting news that I want to present.
We just, Cynthia, you're bringing that up? Okay. You just bear with us, we're bringing it up on the presentation so everybody can see it.
Okay.
We ask everybody just bear with us. We have technical difficulty.
Well, while we're waiting, I will tell you what is in the presentation. We're going to first look at usage numbers, compare the last 2 or 3 years, what's been happening with the Greenway in terms of usage. Our committee also did a new survey. We haven't done a survey on the Greenway since I think it was about 2018. So we felt it was time that we update the survey and find out a little more information about who's using the survey, the Greenway. What are they using it for? And then lastly, we're going to discuss a grant that has been awarded to Westcog, which is some good news for our Greenway. And you may recall that we have applied for grants from DEEP for the last 2 years, and we have not been granted the grant. So that has slowed our progress in terms of an expansion. Okay, usage. From 2022 to 2023, we actually had a 20% increase in usage on the Greenway. That's up even further from 2021. This is usage that is tracked by counters that are on the Greenway. There are 30 different towns that have counters on their particular greenways. Out of those 30 towns, Brookfield's usage ranks 3rd, which is remarkable given the size of our town and what we're competing against. So from June 2023 to November, we did a survey. We got 557 participants. And how did we do that? The methodology. We put lawn signs along the Greenway itself and outside businesses at the 4 corners. We had a flyer placed at the YMCA. Participants for either of those options scanned a QR code which brought them to the survey. Brookfield Parks and Rec also sent an email with a link to the survey to the enlisted members of their department. And participants had the option of giving us an email address for more information as the Greenway expanded. 52% of the people actually gave us an email address, which I think is remarkable. So, the usage. Who's using the Greenway? Well, 67% of the people are between 35 and 64. But if you add on the over 65, that number becomes 85%. So 85% of the users of the Greenway are 35 years of age and older. So we're not getting as many younger people using the Greenway as we suspected we might. And that also is reflected in the fact that 62% of the people say that they don't bring their children to the Greenway. Now, might be because they're 65 years old and don't have any children at home, but clearly it's the upper age bracket that is using the Greenway. 80% of the people using the Greenway are from Brookfield. That's not a surprise. What is a bit of a surprise is that's down about 10% from our last survey. So clearly, other towns and other residents of other towns are discovering the Greenway and frequenting it. The two that stand out the most are Danbury and New Milford. We also found that they're using the Greenway. 46% of those surveyed are using it between 1 and 3 times per week. So pretty healthy numbers there. Where are people parking? Is parking an issue? So 44% of the people have said that they've had an issue finding a parking space. However, the addition of the parking spaces from streetscape on Federal Road, whereas our last survey, most people were using the Silvermine parking lot, now 41% of the people are actually parking on Federal Road. So without getting into the political debate of abatement, clearly parking spaces up Federal Road would contribute to increasing the usage of the Greenway. Next. It's a little hard to read, so I will try my best to tell you. This slide is about what are people doing on the trail. The main purpose is for walking, and that walking is for exercise and recreation. Dog walking 37%, jogging 29%. Those are the next two biggest usage. We asked the residents, since we've had this committee now for 2.5 years, if the town received grant funding to expand the Greenway north to New Milford, would you support that initiative? Clearly 95% said yes, that they would. The Greenway, as we found, and this is no surprise with other greenways as well, brings economic activity to a town. So we tried to measure this. Where are people actually going to spend money? Well, they're going, they're buying, they're going to snacks, ice cream shops, sandwich shops, and they're spending money, water, beverages. 83% of the people said they spend $5 or more. Now, $5 is not that much, but add up a couple of hundred people a day, it's significant. 33% are spending over $10. So clearly there is economic value to the Greenway serving the town of Brookfield. We asked people if there were clubs, walking, running, biking clubs started, would you be interested in joining them? Over 60% said yes, they would. Sorry, I can't read that. We also asked, what other amenities would you like to see on the Greenway? And we got answers: benches, picnic tables, garbage cans, access to potable water, handicapped porta-johns. Those are all things that probably should be on a Greenway. The question is, do we really need them? Who's going to pay for them? I have not gotten into any deeper discussion on this because I haven't had the chance to discuss these with Laura Murphy. However, our committee has researched this, and whatever we decide, if we decide we want benches, if we decide we want more garbage pails, we can actually apply for a DEEP grant to get those items. So that is what we're focused on, and the next round of DEEP funding is in March. So we do have time to put a presentation, an application together, should we decide that we want to move forward on purchasing those items. Okay, we're moving on now to some exciting news, which the Board of Selectmen may or may not be completely familiar with, and I don't think most of the town's residents are familiar with. But as I mentioned earlier, we have been focusing, our committee has been focused on expanding the Greenway north to New Milford. We've applied for 2 grants in the last 2 years from DEEP, and we've been turned down both times. We were very close the last time. They do this on a point basis. We were very close to getting the highest section, but we just missed it. Westcog and the Norwalk River Valley Trail applied for a grant through the federal government, through the RAISE program, which is Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity. To everyone's surprise, the federal government has granted Westcog $4.5 million to complete studies on the Norwalk Valley River Trail. The Norwalk Valley River Trail is actually going to be part of a larger trail which will go from Norwalk up to Kent. What does that mean for us? Next slide. So Westcog was granted $4.5 million out of a cost of $5.5 million. It's an 80% reimbursement of the costs. The application was specifically for the final route of the NRVT, providing funding for study and creation of all the planning construction documents, meaning that once these studies are done, it will be shovel ready. The planning grant will also study the feasibility of connecting not just Norwalk to Kent, but also a spur that will go from Danbury over to the Maybrook Trail in New York, connecting with the Empire State Trail. So a lot of options here. Bottom line is, it's also going to pay for the studies for us moving the Greenway north to New Milford and south to Danbury, which we hadn't even considered. So the bad news is, being a federal grant, this is going to take a lot of time. It's not going to be like a Connecticut DOT grant where it moves quickly. So we're expecting that this whole process may take 2 to 3 years. But at least we are told that we have the funding to do this. Now, that 20% that the municipalities will have to pay, Westcog intends to apply for a DEEP grant in March to cover 10% of that 20% cost. We don't know whether they'll get it or not, but usually when you have a project like this that is connecting towns, DEEP looks very favorably upon that. So that 20% that the town will have to absorb at some point may actually drop to 10%. Next slide. Here are the estimates for the Still River Greenway. So the estimate for connecting Brookfield's terminus at the southern end to Rogers Park, the study is estimated to cost $50,000. It will provide a long-sought connection between the Norwalk River Valley Trail, the Still River Greenway, and the New Milford River Trail. It will create a trail along the river that's compatible with the Still River Alliance, which is restoring the river. The extension from Brookfield to New Milford, 100% design and construction documents, total cost $340,000. The raise 80% would be $272,000 of that. That will design the 1.5 mile extension from our current northern terminus up to the New Milford town line. Excuse me. And then another part of this is there'll be funding in place to go from the New Milford town line all the way up to Kent. So it's very exciting news for all of us. Unfortunately, we'll have to wait a little while for it. But we'll have funding in place. This is a little hard to read, but this is a timeline. And the numbers at the top go from 1 to 30. They represent months. And that is saying, how many months is it going to take to do this study? What I caution you about, however, is those months don't kick in until all of the federal paperwork is actually signed. which at this point has not been done. So we can't really start any of these studies until the paperwork is done, but this gives you some idea as to how long it will take for each of these studies to get done and when the actual completion will take place. Okay? I had added a slide, which we couldn't bring up. I wanted to make you aware that there is a vanity license plate program for greenways now. So you've seen the lighthouse for the Long Island Sound. There now is a greenways vanity plate program. And there are a number of vanity plate programs the DOT sponsors. Only two, the Long Island Sound and the Greenways. That money actually goes to the Greenway Fund to help fund projects. So if you're interested, go to the DOT website. If you can find it on there, it takes a little work, but you can go to the vanity plates. And I just wanted to thank the members of my committee who helped me put this presentation together. Any questions?
No, thank you. I just would like to make one point. Of the total grant, Westcog is hoping for 90% to be paid for with either raised grants or state money. There would leave 10% that the towns would have to pay.
Correct.
So we're aware.
Correct.
So when we get to that point, we're not anywhere near there yet. They have to do all their documentation. There might be a request to come to the town to pay for that 10%.
Right, and that's why I put up that estimate.
Yeah.
So that the board can see, and the Board of Finance can see, well, this is what they're talking about possibly having to pay somewhere down the road. And of course, by the time we get there, the numbers will probably have gone up. So,
I agree.
thank you.
So Jay, I have a question for you.
Still have questions?
You don't get all the questions.
No.
So one of the things that caught my ear was the 6-mile extension going to the south into
Yep.
Danbury. Is there been any discussion on that, and people have a sense of where that route would go? Because you got a city here, so I'm just curious if people have an idea of how it would go.
It's basically, that's what this money is going to pay for.
So would it be to try to find a route?
We as a committee, our ad hoc committee has not even looked to the south. We've concentrated on the north.
Yep.
I believe that Westcog and the Norwalk Valley River Trail people have looked at it, but they haven't come up with anything concrete. They're going to wait for the study to be done.
Okay.
But the idea is to get, they're bringing the Norwalk Valley Trail up to Rogers Park. And then the idea will be to get from Rogers Park to where ours ends at the southern terminus right now.
Okay. It was just a curiosity question.
Yeah, no, it's a good question because
how that would go.
They're going to have their work cut out for them.
There's a lot of stuff between here and there.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So our next item is our monthly financial update. Marcia, would you?
All right. The first thing I want to do is make a correction to what I said earlier. While I don't have the documentation, the finance department does have the documentation.
great.
I received a text
So we'll-
that we have the documentation for the
Thank you.
ambulance.
Okay, so we'll get that to you guys first thing in the morning. Thank you.
So when we talk about 2023, the fiscal year that just ended, that the audited financial statements are on the website. They're a very interesting read. That we will be going through them, making a presentation of them for the Board of Finance at their meeting on Wednesday. So if you do have any interest in learning about them, it's a great way to start. They were filed on time. Only 57 of 169 towns filed on time this year. And we had no control weaknesses or compliance weaknesses noted in the report. With respect to 2024, you have the reports in front of you. And quarterly, we make transfers to the Board of Selectmen and then the Board of Finance. And you've got the reports and the transfers we're looking for. There's two types of transfers. One, so if you're looking at the report that has a brown header on the top, the general fund expenditures, there's a row highlighted, or a column highlighted with pink. That is the intra-fund transfers, where departments are looking to move money from one of their line items to another line item, and that's approved just by the Board of Selectmen. It does not need, by charter, it does not need to go to the Board of Finance. And there's about $10,000 of those, just small things that, where they needed the money and something else. Generally, it's overtime and where they're going to get that money from. That also on the general fund, there are inter-department transfers, moving money from one department to another. Those we can talk a little bit about. The tax collector that has an employee that was going to get a potential promotion the first of the year. To me, the first of the year was July 1st, but apparently they were intending January 1st. So there's some savings there that, because it was the first of the calendar year. So we can take $5,505.50 out of that line. We need some more money in legal. That we have tax litigation. There was a very large bill this month. We thought we were okay in the tax litigation, but there was a court case in November, and just taking that and projecting out the other cases, we would like to have $7,000 more as an inter-fund transfer. Legal fees for just basic lawsuits outside of the retainer, we're thinking that we need 21,000 extra, and these we had have them set up case by case. And then blight, we've talked about this for a few months, that there's two large cases, and we're thinking we need $15,000 extra. Personnel for professional services, we talked to the actuaries, and they have $10,000 in the budget for them that they said is really for when we have union negotiations, so we wouldn't need that this year. The town clerk, legal notices that just she's trying to project what she might have from now to the end of the year, for what she's spent so far and to the end of the year. There was a Republican primary. These notices run $1,700 a piece. If there's going to be a Republican Town Committee caucus, that'll also have a notice. So she is thinking she might need $3,900 more. Land use, communications, and building communications. The budget was prepared under a different department head, and that department head wanted to divide everything out separately. We tried to do that, and just as far as checking in a combined bill for cell phones and iPads, it's just not working well, so we want to combine those back again to one line item. The building department, there was a retirement and new employees hired. The retirement, we had to pay out some vacation time, but we had savings from the new employees being hired at less than the retiree. Professional liability, property and liability insurance, that we have a savings. That this was our first year with cybersecurity, and it cost less than what we had originally budgeted. Partially because it cost less, and partially because we got it partway through the year. As Steve mentioned earlier, that we didn't use all the stipends that the firefighters, the volunteer firefighters, get a $1,500 stipend, and there were less stipends than we had budgeted for. The fire marshal has is an extended vacancy that will be filled in February, so there's some savings there. His software came in less than he had expected, so there's savings there. For highway, there's been a number of turnovers. The non-union, it'll cost us more because we're paying out vacation. Union, it'll cost us less. The health department, he had promised to try to get a grant to pay for some of this during his budget presentation, and he was able to get that grant. So we're taking money out of his budget and reallocating it. Human services, that's social services and senior center combined, they have extra revenue. Their programs are going very, very well. And so they've got a lot of extra revenue, but they need extra money to continue to fund the instructors for that. So, but that's a profit-making area. And then the grounds, Steve talked about this at the last meeting, that because Candlewood Lake Elementary School is difficult to plow and it's not quite done, and they needed more money, a brine machine and other equipment to get that plowing done. The two of these together, there's $2,500 that we have more money going out than we have going in, and that's because we did $2,500 earlier in the fall for pickleball, and we just want to cover that so it's not an additional appropriation, so we would wrap that into these transfers. Any questions on the general fund transfers for expenditures?
No, it's very clear.
I'm comfortable with it so far.
All right.
I do have one small question.
Sure.
On the legal notices from the town clerk. Do they put out a legal notice on an RTC caucus, or is that really the RTC primary?
Both.
There was the primary and the caucus.
Our town clerk puts out a notice on a caucus?
That's what she tells me, because she was saying that it potentially would have 70 names on it, and that's part of the cost.
It surprises me that our town clerk had to do something that was related to an organization which is not an official election of any ilk. It's a political organization, so that just surprised me. So I don't have an issue with the budget transfer, but it just caught my eye.
I'm afraid I don't know anything, but it sounds like it's a state statute.
Okay.
I had the same question, and Andrea did respond that state statute, the town has to pay for the advertisements in the newspaper.
Interesting. I think the town committee also puts a notice in the newspaper, so.
Yeah.
So that's surprising, so, okay.
Do you want to deal with those transfers, or do you want me to?
Yeah, why don't we do that while we're here? So I would make, on the intra-department transfers within the departments, I would make a motion to approve the intra-department transfers for the year-end 2024 as noted on the budget versus actual expenditure reports, which total increases are $10,345.29 and total decreases are $10,345.29. They match, so it's simply transfers between the departments to make the departments not whole, but to even out their expenses. Do I have a second on that?
Sure, second.
Second. Any discussion or questions on that?
Was that your motion, to make the departments whole?
No, to do the transfers intra-departmental.
Oh, you kept.
You just kept going.
Yeah.
So the motion is to approve the intra-department transfers for the year in 2024 as noted in the budget versus actual expenditure report in the amount of $10,345.29.
Yes.
Is that the motion?
Yes.
Okay.
Second.
Any discussion? All those, no?
No.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Then we just discussed the interdepartment transfers, which also go to the Board of Finance. I make a motion to approve the interdepartment transfers for the year end 2024 as noted on the budget versus actual expenditure report we have, and forward it to the Board of Finance for their possible review and approval. Do I have a second on that?
Second?
Second. Any discussion?
For the legal, sorry.
Yeah.
When are those cases expected to be done?
That's really hard to say. Tom, do you have any feel for those? Because some of these could last months, right?
They will be months. There's at least 2 tax appeals with pretrial dates set for March, which are settlement conferences with a judge. The zoning cases have scheduling orders with briefing running out through April, I believe.
Okay.
And then after that, the judge can take 120 days to make a decision.
Okay.
So it could cost more than this.
It could. These are our best estimates as to what the costs will be.
So we may, before the new budget is approved, have to ask for more on these cases, or will we build that into the budget?
No, that would still be, if those expenses are incurred in this fiscal year, they would have to come out of this year's budget, not next year's.
We did try to estimate the costs through the end of the year,
Yeah.
through the end of the case as it might be.
Yeah, that's a good point. So what we think, if this is a total expense that we're going to incur through the end of this fiscal year, of course, that could change. It's really hard sometimes with legal bills to get a good fixed number.
Yes, it is.
Okay, any further discussion or questions?
No.
Okay, having made the motion, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, carries 3-0. Okay, Marcia, you want to move on to the next?
Sure. The next is the capital non-recurring fund. It's got a pink highlight at the top of the page. And this is sometimes we call the cash capital account that we're looking to make transfers between projects. That the library pre-referendum service, the architect fees for the new library. We had $30,000 that was approved in the budget 2 years ago. $4,452 was not needed, and we're trying to move that into. They have a reserve for phase 2, and so it seemed to make sense to move it to phase 2. The fire marshal, his vehicle came in $150 less than anticipated. The replacement of the 6-wheel dump truck came in $229 less than anticipated. The stadium, there was a budget item from several years ago for the stadium field deep cleaning, but the stadium field was replaced. However, the backfield needs deep cleaning and reconditioning. So Parks and Rec has asked if we would just move that $22,500 from the stadium field to the backfield. After the pluses and minuses, there is $379 extra, which would go down into fund balance assigned but not yet allocated to projects.
So I'll make a motion, then we can discuss. I make a motion to approve the proposed transfers between projects in the capital non-recurring fund as shown on the attached report through December 31st, 2023, and forward to the Board of Finance for consideration and possible approval. Do I have a second on that?
I'll second it.
Okay, second. Any questions or?
We can alternate.
Are you?
Yeah.
No, I'm good.
Any issues, concerns?
Just on the library pre-referendum services reserve, that was a $50,000 allocation last year, Marcia, is that right?
This is the first allocation. The first allocation was $30,000, and then last year they asked for $150, but they were only given $50, and so this is left over from the first $30,000.
And you said you want to put that 4,400 into the 50K
That's correct.
to do.
That allowed, so we take that 4452 and transfer it into, to be combined with the 50,000, so they would have a total of 54,000.
That means we can only do, we can give them 46,000 to continue that funding if we keep our trend. and Help
That
us
is-
with budgets.
That is correct.
Okay, so I understand that, but I guess we can cross this bridge when we get there, but that 50,000 that we allocated last year was to do another study. So is that what we're committing to by increasing the amount for another study on Center School?
Not yet. It's been approved, and here's the distinction between a reserve and an approval to spend. And that's why, if you remember last year, the Art Commission had a reserve for 20, and then they wanted to spend it, and we went to the boards. So they have a reserve for 50. You haven't approved them to spend it yet. You're just setting it aside a little bit at a time. So they have a reserve for 50. They've asked for another 100 this year. Possibly the capital budgeting process will bring that down to 50, and they have to ask for 50 next year. I don't know what's going to happen, but that's where it stands. It has not been approved to spend.
They have to come back to us and then to the Board of Finance?
Yeah.
Yes.
Would they have to go to a
Right.
town meeting on that, or?
Depends on the size.
So it
of
depends on the
source of
magnitude,
funding
right.
total.
Okay.
So, does it, I mean, isn't there anywhere else that we could use this $4,400?
Sure, we could put that, right now, we didn't need it in any other funds. We could put that down into fund balance, assigned but not yet allocated. Instead, either one would work.
Or we could leave it in capital non-recurring for any other projects.
Just for other projects, sure.
I would be more comfortable leaving it in capital non-recurring because that's what the original intent of the funding was for.
I would agree with that.
And I don't
Right.
think we need any more studies on Center School. We've already spent over $150,000 on studies, and they all point to
So,
a new build.
So if
Sorry.
we were to do that, then the amount that would go to fund balance would be $4,831.
okay. So I'm comfortable with that, leaving the 50,000 for the library as is, and leaving the 4452 from the first phase, just going into the general fund.
Fund balance in the capital.
Are you guys comfortable with that?
And then it just shows us closeout.
Yeah.
Right.
It's basically just a closeout.
So you may want to,
So I'll move to amend the motion to adjust the, restate the architect fees for the new library to be just a closeout item, and to put the 4452 down with a 379 for a total of 4,831.
Yeah. Okay. I'll second that amendment to the motion, if that needs to be done. Okay, any further discussion on these? Okay, with that amendment.
You have to vote
Oh,
on the amendment
sorry.
first. You have to
Oh.
vote on the amendment first.
Right. Everybody in favor of the amendment? All carried, 3-0?
Yep.
Yes. And then on the original transfer,
As amended.
we have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor with the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Carries 3-0. Okay.
The next one is the ARPA funds, the report on that. It's got green highlights at the top. We're not making any transfers, and we actually can't make transfers there. We can close projects, but we can't transfer them because we would need to go to a town meeting as per the former town attorney. So that is just for your information and any questions that you might have on it.
Yep, good.
So the one question I had was on the last line there, the 2,082,963. That is the amount that we've held aside for offsetting the debt bubble. Did I interpret that correctly?
Correct. It's grown a little bit because as we
That's where
have
the closeouts go,
closed
right?
projects, it's gone there. We've used 161,000 of it to offset taxes this year. The way we decide what we're using to offset taxes is what expires first. So the fund balance that we have from premiums on bonds expired first, so we used that first. But this will all have to be used in next year's budget to offset the debt bubble. Next year, we have the first principal payments on the second half of the bonds. So we will use that in the 2025 budget.
So that won't necessarily lower taxes, that will just offset the increased debt payments.
Correct, because we have debt that's doubled up until the school debt is paid, and instead of increasing taxes and then bringing them back down again, the boards had decided that they would strategically use some of these sources of funds so that people's taxes don't go up and then back down. They just kind of, we all learned the term during COVID, flattened the curve.
Now, the other question I had is the items that still have a ending balance here. Do they all have valid reasons we haven't gotten finished with the projects and done? I mean, there's real delays there.
Yes, some were intended to be paid over time. For example, the school security is SROs, and we know that they have to be paid by December 31st of 2024. The social services liaison, that's a salary that's being paid. It has to be paid by 2024. The fire departments, there was one item that various equipment is started at maybe $500,000, and we go through it every quarter. Do you still have this? Do you still have this? What can I take? And nothing else. Social services is something that's paid to a contractor monthly. Brookfield Playhouse, they did part of their project, and they'll be asking us for more reimbursement. And the high school rooftop air handler over the library, that turned out that they had to re-engineer that to bring the costs down, which they did, but they'll still need more money, and so they're asking for that in the 2025 capital projects.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that one.
A little bit?
A little bit.
Just a little bit.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
The next one is got blue highlights on the top of the schedule. It is the bonded capital projects, and we're just closing two of the projects. The Vector truck has been received and came in under budget, $7,602 under budget, and the payloader came in $22,000 under budget, and we would move that into fund balance, and it's segregated by years because we can only transfer within the bond year, so those all go to the 2023 bond year.
That's to the good.
That is.
So I would make a motion to approve the proposed transfers between projects in the bonded capital projects fund as shown on the attached report through December 31st, 2023, and forward again to the Board of Finance for review and possible acceptance.
Second.
So I have a second from Bob. Any further discussions on that one?
No.
Nope.
All those in favor? Aye. Carries 3-0.
And the next one is got it red across the top, which seems counterintuitive as it's revenue. It should be green on that one. The revenue budget, there's no transfers at this time. That it is just for your information of where we stand budget to actual. As we get into the second half of the year, we'll start doing better projections once taxes are hard to project until the February 1st billings all come in. But we'll start to do more detailed projections on what we think will be coming in based on the last 6 months in the prior years and so forth. And Steve, I didn't know if did you want to talk about some of these other grant revenues?
Yeah, I want to just briefly, some of these we've discussed before, but some residents might be interested. In our general fund, we have received grants in totaling $776,000 that we were not anticipating in our budget. And we've also received a CTR initiative, which is a motor vehicle tax for cars who are registered elsewhere but should be taxed in Brookfield. We received, the final Connecticut budget was higher in 3 items. One was LoCIP, where we're going to get an additional $54,000. At ECS, the schools are going to receive $36,000 more than we budgeted. And municipal revenue sharing is a line item that we've had for many years, but was never actually funded by the state. This year they funded it, and they funded it in the amount of $443,000. We also have $97,000 in CTR initiative, which is the car license plate registrations. We've collected a total of $43,000 to date. We do pay the contractor who does this work for us, goes around, finds cars that are not paying taxes here, 40%. And the blight fines on 20 Station Road, we had 1,450 days of blight fines. They paid them, and they paid us $145,000. So blight moves exceedingly slowly. It's kind of like justice, I guess, huh? Right, moves, grinds. So our blight program is working. We did receive $145,000. Other grants that we are looking at is, we have been told by Johanna Hayes' office, and I've talked to her about this, that we are been approved for a $963,000 grant for our radios for the police and fire, EMS, and to the schools. That is in abeyance right now. It's before Congress. It's been passed by the committee. It is waiting for a January 17th date for a possible vote. If that does not happen, it will go to February 17th date. If that does not get approved, then it dies and they have to start all over. So let's hope Congress does the right thing and moves forward and approves this, because we really could use a $963,000 for a $6 million radio systems. The radio project, the Board of Ed has gotten a grant for $42,000. The school security, the Board of Ed has gotten a grant. Both of these have been approved but not yet received, of $89,000. The Health Department has received a grant of $40,462. The ARPA Senior Center allocated Brookfield has received a grant. ARPA has, through the state, has awarded us $47,000. And registrars early voting, to implement early voting in the upcoming elections. It has to start with the presidential. The state has given us $10,500. If we get all of those, it's $1,193,000 in grants.
It's how much of that's reflected in this revenue report?
In this one, the top part, the 776 is reflected in there. The
bottom is not yet, though.
Yeah,
Right?
where is that?
I don't have a copy of that report that you just read off of.
Where do
I will get that to you. We just put this together this afternoon. Oops, sorry.
So that's how much of the total? 700,000?
Yeah, 700.
776.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's in there already.
776, we're thinking about 1.2. Again, all the cautions on interest income are part of that. But that's the bulk of what we know about. And what we did last year when we had additional revenues is we used that to offset some of the capital purchases. So we used it right away to offset capital in the next fiscal year.
And some of those grants were in the budget, I'm presuming.
Some were in the budget, and they just came in higher. For example, LoCIP and education cost sharing, the major part of the grant was in there, but we pass our budget before the state finalizes theirs. Municipal revenue sharing, CCM has always said, don't put it in the budget, it's too volatile, which is true, because we never received it until last year. And then even this year in August, they told us we were going to get 64,000, and then we received a check for 443. And I called and said, well, what happened here? I need some talking points, because I told them 64,000. They said, oh, well, it's, accrual based.
years?
And it was really, there was a 2-year funding. If you go back to the state statute, there was 2 years of funding where they increased it from they went from one program to this program, one fund in the state's records to this fund. So if nothing else happens, I don't think we can expect it to be this high again. Whether or not we should put it in the budget, we'll defer to CCM and their advice on how volatile that is going forward.
My feeling is it's a one-time. That's my feeling. But we'll see what CCM says.
Steve, I'll just make one comment. When you were
Yeah.
going through your comments on the
Yeah.
grants, you said the schools got more money under ECS. I just want to be clear, the schools don't get that money, the town gets that money.
I'm sorry, you're right. You are
The town
right.
gets that money.
Right.
The schools would love to have it flow directly to them, but it's intended for the
does
town to offset school-related costs.
You are
and its
correct. I
taxes.
stand correct.
And even the other two on the school security and on the radios related to the schools applied for that money, but the money will be coming to the town.
Right.
And we thank them.
But in the end, we're all one big happy family. Okay.
Any other questions on the finances?
I'm sorry, what did you just say about your last comment?
So that we've got additional money from, that the schools applied for to help offset the radios and the school security. It's about 150,000 combined. But the school applied for it, but the money will be coming to the town, and it will not offset a school budget or allow them to spend more money.
That's always a concern that people have, is that the town, that grants come into the schools, and then the school just spends it on whatever, and the fact is, it goes to the town, and it's well controlled, right? We actually
Yeah.
are very happy to have it in your hands.
Yeah, and
to
we can't
control
spend
so.
it either. We have to go through the approval process as well.
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions, concerns? Thank you, Marcia. I think that was very complete. New items that we're discussing. The Brookfield Library received a $10,000 grant from the Brookfield Education Foundation. They're going to use that for a visit from a best-selling author, Brendan Slocum. Updates.
Do we need to vote on anything on that? Or is that just informational?
No, that was the last. The last was just an update.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Yeah, you want to talk about that, Caroline? Come on up.
I'd like to know who that author is and what.
Yeah, come on up, Carolyn. So we're going to ask Carolyn Ford to come to the podium. Carolyn is our library director. Please.
Good evening.
So every year, this is I think this is the 6th year, we have a program called One Town, One Read. And this past year, we had the book that was chosen by the community. It is called The Violin Conspiracy by the author Brendan Slocum. He is a musician and a teacher, and his book's really great. And during the summertime, we have multiple programs that pertain to the book. So for example, we had a ukulele program that was really well attended, and other programs. So in the summer, for those OTOR programs, we had about 237 participants come for programs. And so because of that, we had really great momentum, and so we wanted to see if we could get the author to come and visit, not only for the town community, but also we wanted to get him to speak at the school. He is an African-American man who's a classical musician, and he has a really interesting story. Oh, excuse me. So one of the things that he says in his materials is when he comes to a concert hall to perform, people think he's a janitor. They don't look at him like he's a musician because he's a classical musician, particularly because he's a black man. And so this really struck a chord with us at the library, and we wanted to see if we could get him to come to Brookfield. And so we reached out to the Brookfield Education Foundation, went there, applied for their grant, and they came back with some suggestions and some things that we had to change. The Brookfield Education Foundation, as you probably already know, they want to have new and interesting and different programs, so we can't just say, oh, we want this man to come and do an author signing or a book talk, because that isn't innovative. And so what we decided to do was work with the Brookfield High School and the history teacher, Christopher Buckley, and they're having a diversity day there at the high school, and so we're having the author go and speak at the diversity day and also do a program at the library. So because we made the changes that they had suggested, they had approved us of the $10,000, and we were really excited about it. So that's the story.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you know what date is he coming, or is that not?
I do know what day it is. I have it written down. It's on Friday, February 16th. So that's the diversity day at the high school, and the library program would be the day before on the 15th, the Thursday.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Oh, you're
Any
welcome.
questions, further questions?
Sounds awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Okay, the next issue under updates is 731 tax abatement agreement for 731 Federal Road. We tabled this at our last meeting pending a completion of approaching the chairmen of the Board of Finance, the planning, the economic development, and the tax assessor with a copy of the tax abatement agreement and soliciting their comment. Mr. Fisher, who is here tonight, commented to me, and also the chairman of the Board of Finance did comment to me. Both of them are in agreement and believe that the tax abatement should be moved forward. First, I'll make the motion, and then we can have a discussion. I make a motion that we accept and approve this tax abatement for 731 Federal Road. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. And then for discussion purposes, we've heard people earlier saying that we should not approve this abatement, and this is not only for parking spaces, although we will get 36 dedicated municipal parking spaces, which you could see from the Still River Greenway conversation, that the parking spaces in town center are getting used, and they're going to continue to be used. And as business grows, more people will be going on the Greenway, more people will be wanting to park. The parking that we have on Silver Mine next to the police station is full all the time. It's a small parking lot. You can hold, I think, 15 cars or so. You can park at Town Hall, but it is not always easy to get across the fields if the weather is not good, because there's no direct path from Town Hall, macadam, or gravel to get to the Greenway. And as Jay Annis said earlier, more and more people are parking in the town center to go on the Greenway. So we will get those dedicated parking spaces deeded to the town. The other thing we will get, our plan of conservation and development calls for a supermarket, a grocery store in our downtown. It is incredibly hard to attract a grocery store. They're very capital intensive. They require a lot of money to build. They require an incredible investment. As a consideration, I think everybody's seen the Amazon Fresh store in the Raymore and Flanagan. parking, shopping area. Amazon Fresh has $3 million in personal property in their store that they pay taxes on. A new grocery store, we estimate, will at least have $500,000 worth of personal property that they will pay taxes for as long as that store is there. And I think a more reasonable estimate is that they will have about $1 million worth of personal property. If we needed parking in the town center, which I think most people agree we are going to need it, the time to get parking and to do that is before every building is built. If you try to do it after, it gets incredibly expensive to do parking. West Hartford had this issue and concern. West Hartford is incredibly popular. It's a beautiful downtown, and they had residents who couldn't find parking spaces, drive around for half an hour. Their solution, finally, a developer came to them and said, well, if you let me do this, I will build you a 4-story parking garage. And that's what they did. They have a 4-story parking garage behind their downtown. I don't think we need to go there, but I think the time to plan for municipal parking as our town center grows over the next 10, 15, 20 years is now. So if we had to buy a piece of property in the Four Corners, we would need about a half an acre to get 36 spaces. Our Director of Public Works tells me that to build the parking lot would cost $89,000. It would cost about $125 to buy a half an acre if you could find a half an acre of land in the Four Corners. You would have to maintain that parking lot, and you would also forego the taxes that the developer who owns 731 will be paying us for those parking spots that they build. So if you look at this, over and all, we've done an estimate that it's quite possible that the offsets of not buying land, not putting a parking lot, not replacing it, not lining it, not plowing it, not cleaning it, not maintaining it, and taking it off the tax rolls could cost upwards of $585,000. The tax incentive that we're giving the developers $385,000. The math on that's pretty straightforward. That would be $152,000 the town would be to the good while still getting 36 dedicated parking spaces. So between having a grocery store, which is in our plan of conservation and development, and I think there isn't anybody in Brookfield who wouldn't prefer, if they've got 4 or 5 items to buy, to go to a grocery store in the town center than to fight their way down Federal Road on a Saturday morning past Costco and BJ's to go to ShopRite. I know a lot of people in town have told me that they will not even shop on Federal Road. They go to Bethel or New Milford or Newtown to shop for grocery stops. So a grocery store, as defined in our plan of conservation and development, is one of the anchors that you want for a vibrant downtown. So I think that the tax incentive that we are proposing to offer 731 Federal Road is both cost effective for the town, reasonable, brings in a grocery store, and gets us more parking. And I think it's a win for the town, even from an economic standpoint. And the reason that I think we should give this tax abatement is that it does bring a grocery store to town. Incredibly hard to get. Incredibly hard to get. And that grocery store will be here for 10, 15, 20 years. They usually build, and I think that will be well shopped. I think a lot of people from Brookfield will go there. And all of the other businesses in our town center will benefit too, because people go to the grocery store, then they go get a cup of coffee at Dunkin' Donuts. They visit the other stores in town. So it begins to build that really vibrant downtown that the POCD has been calling for. And it takes time to do these things, but that's why I think the tax abatement should be approved. Is there any other comments? I'm sure you guys have looked at this. If you have anything you'd like to say about it?
Yeah, I'd like to start. So
Sure.
the grocery store is coming. It's already built, right?
No.
No.
No. The building that the grocery store would go into is being built right now. The grocery store has not been built. The grocery store could still pull out.
So whether we approve this or not, those 36 parking spots are already approved and allocated?
No, if we don't approve this, they're not going to give us the dedicated parking spots.
What does that mean, give us dedicated parking?
They have designated 36 spots within their parking lot that will be dedicated to municipal parking, meaning someone can go there, park, go on the Greenway, or walk up the street even if they want to, without getting in trouble. Remember, this is a private parking lot. That parking lot is for the clients of their businesses and their residents. If you park there and you are not a resident or going to one of their businesses, they could have your car towed.
So they're gonna have a parking monitor?
I don't know if they're gonna do that or not. I think if they got to the point where their parking lot was completely full, they might get to that point where they start looking to see, hey, is that person who's parking there walking down the Greenway, or are they shopping in my grocery store that's in my building?
What they're agreeing to, including the maintenance and so forth, is covered in paragraph 3 of the draft agreement.
Can you say that again, Tom? I did not hear you.
I said, with respect to the parking area, that's covered in paragraph 3 of the draft abatement agreement.
So this
Including their obligation to plow it, maintain it.
Right.
And ultimately to convey a permanent easement to the town.
So this agreement has both sides of it. It has the abatement they're gonna get on taxes, plus the commitment they're giving
Right.
us on the taxes, including the maintenance of it.
Right.
I'm sorry, the parking spaces, including the maintenance of it.
Is there an updated contract aside from the one that's in the packet? Because this one still says 2020 on it,
Well,
That'll
we
be
would,
changed if you approve it.
we would update it if approved,
but they signed this already.
but
In
we didn't
October.
as a town, so we would have to update it and approve it. All the language is correct except for that date.
We would just update the date on page 1.
Which is usually filled in at final signing.
Right.
As contracts go.
Okay, so last month you asked, well, the chair of the Board of Finance asked several months ago for a business case, 2 months ago or so. And last month, I think that came up again. Was that business case built? Was that established? Do we have a complete application for a tax abatement from this developer?
Yeah, the
And
requirement
where
is for the first selectman or first select woman to communicate with the chairs of all those boards, explain the business case that they have made, which I just described to everyone here, as to why they think that the abatement is a good thing for the town of Brookfield. I have just done that both for this board and to all of those. Tammy Fisk has not responded, but she is out sick, so I don't expect her to respond. The chairman of the EDC, who's here tonight, did respond, telling us that he thinks the abatement is a good thing. The chairman of the Board of Finance reviewed it, and I discussed it with him, and he also thinks that the abatement is a good thing for the town overall.
So is that in writing from those two commissions, or?
Yep.
And where do we find that?
I could send it to you if you requested it.
I mean,
If
if
you
I'm
want it.
voting for an abatement, I'd like to see all of the substantiating documentation.
Do you believe me or not that I said what I
I
said?
don't believe you, Steve, no.
Okay, I will send it to you. Mr. Fisher, did you say you agreed with my assessment of the 731 Federal Road tax abatement?
I agree with you, yes.
Okay. So for once, I'm not a
Now
liar.
Now I believe
I
you.
will send you Glenn Rooney's document, but I am not a liar, and I really dislike your making that accusation. It's wrong.
It should be part of the packet that you provide to the board, Steve.
I just
Please.
gave you the assessment.
Do your job.
Move on. I am doing my job.
How
So,
much is this gonna cost the town?
Zero. Were you listening to what I just said?
You rambled off $385,000. What does that mean?
I listed every specific
Page 2
thing.
calls, it should be spelled out. The last time you gave a tax abatement, it was very clear. The packet was complete. We've got other developers coming down the pike. People have been asking, does this mean if
We
you
will
approve it now,
only
the
give-
precedent is gonna be the next
No.
person who wants it's also going to get it?
No, there have only been 2 effective tax abatements in the history of Brookfield. One was given to Brookfield Village 10 years ago by a previous administration. I agreed with that because they were the first to build in the Four Corners. And if everybody who's lived here for more than 6 or 7 years knows our downtown was a bit of a mess. It was not in great shape. And that was to incent Brookfield Village to come in and build. They were taking a risk coming into Brookfield. Had a blighted downtown. They didn't know if they could get the rents they wanted because of our downtown. But we built the streetscape, they built their structures, and I thought that was a reasonable incentive given by Mr. Tinsley at the time. This is only the second abatement that we would be giving, so we don't give them out willy-nilly. There is a lot of development happened on Federal Road over the last 10 years, and every time some developer has come to me, with the exception of 731 Federal Road and Branson, I have turned them down. You have to have an overriding reason for the town to give you an abatement. That has to be a good reason. That has to be a reason that furthers the goals of the town's plan of conservation and development. In this case, it does it in two ways. It does it by giving us dedicated parking spaces, and it brings a grocery store, which is specifically mentioned in the POCD. It's just not an apartment building that's going up. So that's why I think it's a reasonable incentive to give.
So did I hear you correctly that the business case that you worked with the different staffs to develop said that we're giving 385,000 with all these formulas of tax abatement, and the offset to that is 500 and what did you say the number?
38,000.
538,000.
If we had to buy a piece of property, build a parking lot, maintain it, take it off the tax rolls. And that does not include the $109,000 that the developer is paying for the streetscape we approved earlier.
Yeah, we agreed in the last meeting that we took that separately.
Is it tit for tat? This is money laundering.
It doesn't include that,
It's not money
I said.
laundering.
Listen.
This is a business. This is a business case. There's a benefit and there's a cost. And I'm gonna just be very clear. Tax abatements ought to be very clear that it's a benefit to the town for giving that tax abatement, and it's not some general, we'd like them to come here.
I agree with you 100%.
So this one, the fact that we have numerically, if we think we need that parking spaces in that area, and it's gonna save us 538,000, and we're gonna get it by giving a tax abatement of 385,000, I don't know why we wouldn't do this. So the only debate would be, do we really need 36 spaces there? And to me, I look at that part of the town, we need 36 spaces for that Greenway. I think Mr. Annis would agree that that's an issue from a parking point of view, so I would support this. The question I have is actually from one of the public commenters earlier, that they said the placement of these 36 parking spaces is inconvenient. Is that true?
Well, it all depends on how you look at it. Mr. Saluga said it was inconvenient. Remember, when you go to the Greenway, you're there to go for a walk. So if you have to walk a little further to take a walk.
That sounds like a rationalization. I guess the question is, are the parking places up right next to the Greenway, or are they tucked off where you have to go around 3 or 4 buildings?
Some are at the top end, right? At the northern end, right there. Can you see, Bob? Right?
So it's up right next to the Greenway.
Right, and then some are down on the bottom right. Do you see the shaded? Very,
down
very
over
bottom
here?
right. Very, very bottom on the right side. See it?
Oh,
there?
way over
There,
here.
there.
Okay.
That's about
10 of them. 10 over here,
26 over here.
perhaps
10 here.
200 feet, those parking spaces.
I see. So the answer is some and some, right?
Yeah.
There's a handful
I think
of
they're not the most convenient on the southern end.
there are 10 out of the 36 that are kind of on the back behind the building.
Yeah.
And the remainder are right up next to the Greenway.
Correct.
Actually, those 16 annotated on the north side are really concerning because it appears that they dug into the hill where that protected species is.
Well, has that been approved by the zoning?
Yeah, it's been approved. They've already built it. It's already paved. They did not dig into the endangered area. If they did that, we would have stopped them immediately. Zoning would have been up
Yeah, I
there.
would presume that there's a wetlands approval for
Yep.
this project.
Yeah. Yeah, the parking lot has already been built in the last month or so. And obviously, our building inspectors, fire marshal, and all of our other inspectors are there on a regular basis to ensure that they do not go into the disturbed area. In fact, the disturbed area is surrounded by a fence right now, so it would be pretty difficult to get in there without people knowing it.
Okay, well, that's good news. But back to my previous point about it already being built, you're telling me now that those spots are already there.
The parking lot is there, the spots have not been lined yet, no.
So you're making an argument to give them parking spaces that already exist.
No, I'm making an argument that they dedicate those parking spaces to municipal
Are they
parking.
gonna have a sign that says
they
this
should.
is for Brookfield's
Yes,
users
the developer
only?
is willing to do that, yes.
And then enforcement, it's just, I don't see the benefit. The building's already up, grocery store's coming. Oh, and by the way, over here,
No.
where the True Value is supposed to go, that's not even there yet. So has that building been approved? Because that's not part of the grocery store, that's the other parcel. That
Yes,
Mr.
that's the other
Saluga was
parcel.
asking
No, I
about.
think that is a planned, parking's there, but that's planned.
So
that
is the
building-
36 just the stuff over here, or does it include the plan?
I'm sorry, say again?
Does the 36 spaces include, it's all of this over here, or does it include this?
Includes both. Both are included.
So the other thing is, the contract is now wrong because it should be 26, not 36, because this other parcel isn't even approved yet.
No, that parcel is approved.
But
What
you
are
told
they
us it
putting
wasn't
at?
731 Federal.
Yeah, but it is approved. It's part of, they're putting the two properties together, I believe. And they're gonna guarantee us 36 spaces.
You know, I have a couple other points, if you don't mind. There's no business case for Bob or I haven't seen it. If that information exists somewhere, if the meeting was recorded, I don't know, Jim, if your meeting was recorded, I'd love to see that, or hear about it, or see something in writing. Again, the contract, it's questionable. What I really don't like is that in 2020, there was an email that Steve Dunn sent prematurely telling the developer that the project would have the full support of the board before it was even taken to any meeting for vote. So it seems to me that you're really trying to push this through because it was something you agreed to, you know, almost 4 years ago. So what is it? What are we doing here? We're giving them an abatement on the residents of the town for parking?
If we do not give them the abatement, they have told us the grocery store will not come. They will not build the grocery
That I
store.
do not believe.
You can ask Paul Scalzo yourself. Again, that's what he told me.
Paul
I'm
Scalzo
repeating.
and the chain developer owner of the grocery store came to my office, you know, 2 years ago.
I can only tell you what Paul
It's built.
Scalzo told me.
It's built.
I
The
would
grocery
believe he
store's
would
coming.
repeat the same thing to you. You can
Well,
have that
he's not
conversation.
here. That's another
I
thing.
have
Where is he?
made the business case for this. I've shown where if we had to buy our own parking lot, pave it, maintain it, do all of those things and take a half an acre off of the town's tax rolls, it would cost the town about $538,000.
Here's the email dated 2/29/20. Paul, here is the agreement based on our discussions and agreement. We will bring before the Board of Selectmen at our next meeting for formal adoption. The Board of Selectmen has already agreed to the terms of the agreement and I expect unanimous approval. How can you agree without having taken it to a meeting?
I talked to the Board of Selectmen. We had a discussion. When you have things, I sent notes to all of our Board of Selectmen, and you can go back, pick whatever you want in whatever time period. This has been something that the town has been looking for, getting a grocery store in the Four Corners, in the town center, for many, many years. This would have been approved back then, right? But Paul didn't complete the application process, and that's why we're here now.
Where is the completed application packet?
He sent it to all of us. All of us got it, right? All of us got it in December, and you made the concern that this hadn't been gone to the chairs of all the various boards. And I said, which should have happened previously, but it didn't. So I went to all the board chairs and followed the rules of our tax abatement ordinance. I have received back comments from the board members, board chairs that I told you about. We have followed every single step of the process. We are now looking at whether we should approve this or not. I have given the Board of Selectmen the case as to why this is a good financial decision on the part of the town. I don't know what else I can do to convince you that this is the right thing to do.
Have we had any residents come and say, please give them the abatement so we can get 16 parking spots?
The paragraph 7 says, paragraph 3 states that they're guaranteeing 36 total spots.
But the other 10 won't come until.
But it's guaranteeing 36.
It's
Whether, if
guaranteeing
they don't do the
36.
other 10, we'll get 36 elsewhere.
Okay, call it 36. Has anybody come to us and said, please give them a tax abatement so we can get 36 parking spots that are going to be there, because they're there now, 26 of them?
No, but plenty of residents have come to me and said, please, Steve, let's get a grocery store in the town center. Let's get a store that we can go to without spending 20 minutes fighting the traffic on Federal Road. That's what plenty of people have told me over the last 4 or 5 years. And our plan of conservation and development, the guiding document for the town that we spend a couple $100,000 on developing every 10 years, calls for a grocery store in our town center as one of the anchors to build a beautiful downtown, a vibrant downtown.
How many apartments are in that building?
Off the top of my head, I don't know, 30 or 40? I don't know off the top of my head.
So without the 36 additional, they have enough parking for that building?
Yes, or zoning would not have approved it.
Well, there's not enough parking at Brookfield Village, so how was that approved?
I can't, I don't know, we can argue about 16 different parking lots. Let's stick to the subject at hand.
I'm trying to understand it, Steve.
Yeah.
Because it's important.
It is, I agree with you.
And I don't think it's
If
something that's
if you don't think
comprehensive.
yeah.
It's incomplete.
I've made the argument, I
So
think
what
it,
is that piece of paper you're looking at and reading?
these
the
are my
numbers off
notes as to what I just described to you. It would cost about $125,000 to buy a piece of property, 1/2 acre in the Four Corners. The cost of building a parking lot, according to our head of public works, is $89,000. To maintain it is $5,000 over 10 years. The replacement of the parking lot would be $108,000. Even if you push that out to 12 or 13 years, our standard in town for all our road projects is to replace the roads on a 10-year basis. Parking lots are very similar. You figure every 10 years. So, and the loss of the personal property taxes would be about $23,000 over those 10 years. That totals up, and then the personal property tax that we would not get from the grocery store, because grocery stores are one of the most capital-intensive things to build, would be about $188,000 in taxes that we would forego because the grocery store does not move in. That totals $538,000. Any way you look at this, even if you take 20% off of that, right? You are still in a net positive position vis-a-vis the $385,000 that we would give the developer as a tax incentive.
Well,
This is
earlier
a
you
win for
said-
the town.
Earlier you said we have a great parking lot here, but we don't have a connection to the Greenway. It seems to me if we bought some of that gravel that you referenced, it would be a lot less expensive than giving them this abatement.
No, it wouldn't, because you weren't just listening to the numbers I just quoted you. We are to the good on this project. The town is to the good on this project, in my opinion. Bob, do you have any further comments?
Well, first comment is if you've gotten, Steve, if you've gotten letters back from the Board of Finance and the planning and the EDC, and you had an estimate, you should have sent it to us.
Yep.
Let me just start there. You should have sent it to us so that we had it in our hands, we had a chance to review it in advance of the meeting, just not for nothing. Secondly, you know, to me, the test of a tax abatement is there value to the town?
Right.
And does it attract the businesses we need, right? And it has to pass both of those tests.
I agree.
And in my mind, it passed both of the tests.
Mine too.
Now, could we look at 1,000 alternatives? Yes, but I think it's time to get on with this.
Okay, so I made a motion that we approve the 731 Federal Road tax abatement. Do I have a second?
It's already been seconded.
Oh, it's already been seconded, sorry, we've been talking so long, I forgot. Okay, having said that, all those in favor of the abatement, please vote by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
That approved 2-1, thank you. Okay, our next, this is pretty easy, we have a list of the ex officio assignments for the Board of Selectmen members. We did allocate those out, and the list of the boards that we each will be working with is attached. We already covered the Brookfield Volunteer Fire Government reimbursements, and then we moved to the consent agenda. I make a motion that the Selectmen approve items A to E on the consent agenda. Do I have a second for discussion purposes?
Second.
Second. This includes the Selectmen approval of routine matters, the Board of Selectmen meeting minutes from 12/4 and 12/18, the driveway bond releases for 9 Farview and 1 Christian Lane, excavation bonds for 3 and 27 Green Ridge Drive, employee changes, new hires with James Murphy as a dispatcher, Mary Pat Cipolla as a senior center kitchen coordinator, and that is all of the items on the consent agenda. Do I have any further discussion on this?
Yeah, I'm gonna be a no here because the employee changes, item 8 Echo is wrong. The employee changes should have included the firing of Ms. Smeniak.
You know, I won't argue with you. I make a motion that we amend that item to include Ms. Smeniak's dismissal. Do I have a second?
You should second that, Tara.
I'll second it.
Okay. Any discussion on that? All in favor?
Should have been on there in the first place.
Yeah, well, it was on, it's a discussion under item 10.
I
so-
understand, it should have been there
Yeah.
in the first place.
Okay.
Oh, also, what about Tom Beecher as the new town attorney? Does that have to be on there? He's an employee.
He's not an employee.
And we approved that at the last meeting. as a
And
separate-
we approved him as town attorney at the last meeting.
The charter says all paid individuals are employees of the town. Is he not paid by the town of Brookfield?
Yeah, but that one was actually approved as a separate item in our last meeting. so
Right, but it wasn't effective.
It doesn't need to have it on the consent agenda if we've already approved it.
Yeah, he's not an employee of the town. He's a contractor of the town.
Is he paid by the town of Brookfield?
Yeah, a lot of
Yes.
people are paid by the town of Brookfield as a contractor.
And they're not employees?
No,
Contractors
they're
are
not employees.
Okay.
No. I mean, we hire a
beg
company
to
to plow our parking lots. They're not employees of the town. They're contractors, so is Tom. Okay. Moving on to 9.
No, you have
Oh,
to,
I'm
we
sorry,
have to
do we-
approve the amendment,
yeah.
and then we have to approve the consent
So
agenda.
do we have an approval for the amendment of adding Ms. Smeniak?
I'm okay with it.
I'm okay with that. Are you okay with that? Okay, with that amendment, everybody in favor of the consent agenda, please say aye. Aye?
Aye.
Okay, that carries 3-0. Number 9, additional monthly agenda items. I will make a motion that the Selectmen appoint Laura Kruger as a member of the Arts Commission for a term beginning 1/8/24 through 2/2/26. Do I have a second for that?
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
Just looking at just for clarity.
Yeah.
And for the record, there were 2 vacancies on the Arts Commission. I believe, given the dates, this is filling the position that had been previously held by Bridget O'Hara.
Okay.
And that's why the 2/26 date is there, and that's a term, it's a midterm, appointment, so just for clarity.
And that's why it starts on January 8th.
And that's why it starts on January 8th. It's a vacancy, not a new appointment.
Right, good point. Thank you very much for bringing that up. Any discussion on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. On the Board of Assessment Appeals, I make a motion that the Selectmen appoint Christopher Donnelly as an alternate member of the Board of Assessment Appeals for a term beginning 2/5/24 through 2/2/26. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, okay. Any discussion?
So this one, you've proposed making the appointment for a 2-year term, but that one will have some 2-year and some 4-year terms. Is there a reason you chose the 2-year term instead of a 4-year term?
There's no particular reason, but no.
Under the charter, for the 3 alternates, to kick things off, this is a new.
These are new positions, right?
New positions by the charter change.
Right.
2 of the alternates need to have 2-year terms, 1 needs to have a 4-year term, so that they're staggered from that on.
Right.
Okay.
So
you
we have
just-
a rolling
So you're just,
appointment.
because there's 2 2-year terms, you just
Right,
did one of those here?
first, yes.
Okay, got it.
Okay.
And that's why it starts on February 5th instead of tonight, because it's a new position. So it'll start with where all appointed officials normally start, which is the first Monday in February.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Any other further discussion? You know, I will say, we had some people speak earlier. I've met Chris Donnelly, incredibly smart, incredibly capable young man, and I really like to see younger people join our boards. I look forward to him working with us if we appoint him. Does anybody else have any comments or concerns? Okay, all in favor of appointing Chris, say yes. Aye?
Aye.
Aye, carried. You're a yes?
Aye.
I heard
Aye,
it.
okay. That motion carries. I make a motion that the Selectmen appoints First Selectman Steve Dunn as representative and Sheldon Kahn as alternate on the Housatonic Resource Recovery Authority for a term beginning 1/8/24 through 6/30/25. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second. Any discussion on that?
Does this, does the HRA have to vote on this too, or does this automatically codify it?
Does that answer your question?
Yes,
Okay.
it does.
And why 6/30/25, out of curiosity? That's their term?
That's their
Okay,
term.
I got you, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Any further discussion on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I would make a motion that the Selectmen appoint Brian Zimmerman as an alternate member of the Parks and Recreation Commission as recommended by the DTC for a term beginning 2/5/24 through 2/7/28. Do I have a second on that?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on that?
Well, we heard comment earlier about conflict of interest for folks serving on boards of sports organizations and being affiliated with Parks and Recreation. I think there's validity in that, so it's food for thought. I don't know if it's ethical.
I don't see that he's on the board of,
He's the vice president of BBA.
okay.
I think he's gonna have to cross that bridge when it comes to it in terms of anything that is specifically related to his organization.
He could
I think
recuse
generally-
himself.
Generally speaking, as a member
There
of
it
Parks
is.
and Rec, they're gonna govern various usages of fields and so forth, but I don't think that's a direct conflict.
You know, I think if it did come to a conflict, we would ask him to recuse himself. We have a lot of volunteers in town. It's interesting, volunteers in town tend to volunteer for more than one thing. And they're involved in a lot of different activities. I'm comfortable if it came to that, I'm sure Mr. Zimmerman would recuse himself to anything that affected his participation as a commissioner on the BBSA.
Do we have any other members of the Parks and Rec is probably one of the commissions in town that would have that in spades. People who
Yeah.
volunteer for
Yeah.
some athletic organizations also
Yeah.
would want to be on Parks and Rec.
Yeah.
Or on the Booster Club, but that's not a governmental entity.
Right.
Do we know if there's any others who have the same conflicts?
To my knowledge, I don't think so, but I'm not sure what every member of the Parks and Rec Commission does other volunteer work for. But it is something to watch, I think, and ask anytime something came up that could possibly affect your membership in one group, affects your joining another group or acting on behalf of another group, you should recuse yourself.
Or when there's money involved, more importantly.
I'll tell you, we struggle getting volunteers. I'd be okay with this as long as he gets a specific letter admonishing him to recuse himself in any situation which would involve the BBA getting any sort of benefit, including financial, especially financial.
Okay.
And then copy the chairman of that commission on that.
Yeah, I will do that.
I think every new member gets a copy of the ethics provisions as well.
Yeah, and ethics covers it too. Okay. Okay, any further discussion on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, carries 3-0. Okay, I would make a motion that the selectmen appoint Liam Ania, who is a Republican, as an alternate member of the Zoning Board of Appeals for a term beginning 2/5/24, and we're going to move this, change this a little bit this evening, to 2/2/28. 2/7/28. I'm sorry. 2/7/28. Okay. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
A second. Any discussion?
Just for clarity, because the
Yeah.
people listening don't know why we made that change. There were 2 vacancies, and it was cleaner to put him in the 4-year vacancy.
Yep. So, having clarified that, why we did that, thank you, Bob, very much. All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Carries 3-0. I would make a motion that the selectmen appoint Curtis Timmerman as a member of the Zoning Commission for a term beginning 1/8/24 through 12/1/25.
I'll second that.
A second. It's for discussion purposes. Curtis now sits on the board as an alternate, and I wanted to add this. One of the issues we have here is Curtis is unaffiliated. That position calls for a Democrat because the Democrat resigned. But if the Brookfield DTC approves, we can appoint an unaffiliated voter to that position. The Brookfield DTC has sent me a letter, and I will ask that we include that in the record, approving and supporting Curtis Timmerman becoming a member of the zoning board. So he will go on the board as an unaffiliated with the approval of the Democratic Town Committee. Any further discussion? I know Curtis was involved in the zoning board a few years ago when we redid all the zoning rules and we went to the forms-based. He was the person on the zoning board who led the zoning board's review and approval of it. He did an incredible job, so I think
And prior to that, he was the chairman of the ZBA. So,
Yeah.
So he's got a lot of experience.
got a
in
lot of
zoning.
experience, which we need.
Deserves to be supported.
Yeah. Okay. So, any further discussion, questions? Okay. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. That carries 3-0. That brings us to our last item, consideration of employee dismissals. Does anybody have anything they would like to say on that?
Yeah, I do. I have a lot to say about that. The first of which is I believe that you are in direct violation of the charter under C5-3, where it says you're supposed to take the notice of the dismissal to the next Board of Selectmen meeting. She was dismissed by you on the 7th. Our next meeting as a board was on the 18th, in which you did not bring it to our attention. And the next meeting thereafter is tonight. So you missed a meeting, Steve. You're in violation of C5-3 of the charter.
I believe I sent notice to each of the Board of Selectmen via email.
It says you're supposed to take it to a meeting, at our next meeting.
Yeah.
That's the first order
But,
of
but
business.
that was a special meeting.
That might be anticipated.
That's our next meeting, at our next meeting.
But a special meetings, you cannot bring anything to a special meeting that has not been agreed upon and posted at least 24 hours ahead of time as agenda items. You can't do it.
You fired her on the 7th, our next meeting was on the 18th. You
And
could have put it on the agenda.
It
That's what
wasn't
you-
on the
That's what you
agenda.
were obligated to do by charter, and you did not do that.
No, I think that the meaning of the charter means that take to before our next Board of Selectmen meeting, our normal monthly Board of Selectmen meetings.
Shall give notice of each hiring or dismissal to the Board of Selectmen at its next meeting. Our next meeting was the 18th.
I would read that to mean our next meeting.
That's your
is
interpretation.
January, that's right, not our next special
The charter is clear.
meeting.
At the next meeting of a Board of Selectmen. The three of us were there, were we not? That's
We
our
were.
meeting.
Or
You failed.
Tom, do you have any clarification on that?
It can be interpreted as the next regular meeting of the board. In any event, that doesn't create the rescission of the firing.
No, I'm just stating that he is in violation of the charter and interpreted, it says our next meeting. That was our next meeting, whether it's special, wonderful, excellent, it was our next meeting. Okay? And also, I wanna know why you terminated Ms. Smeniak. You ran on transparency. You were going to be more transparent. Here you have it. Be transparent, Steve. Let us know. We deserve to know. This board deserves to know. Ms. Semeniak deserves to know. The employees of this town hall deserve to know. And the residents deserve to know.
My position on this, after in talking to both our town attorney and our labor attorney, I have never in my entire career discussed personal issues in public.
Ms. Semeniak is here in public.
Yes, she's
Are
welcome to.
Are you okay with us speaking about it in public, Fern? Tell the town, Steve.
I'm not.
I've said as much as I'm gonna say. I'm not gonna discuss personal issues in public. Do you have anything you wanna say, Bob?
Of course I do. So, especially since half the audience decided I'm the deciding vote here and were appealing to me directly, I think I need to stand up and talk about how I feel about this whole topic. And I'm going to pull on some of my experience on the Board of Education. Personnel matters, employee matters are complex. They're almost always very personal and full of emotion. I think we would all agree with that. And I heard a lot of that in the public comment today. A lot of support for Mrs. Menyak. You know, when we was on the Board of Education, we had a very strong policy that we would not talk about personnel matters in public. I understand what you're saying, Tara, but it was, there's a lot of depth and nuance in those sorts of matters that you cannot even begin to capture in a public meeting like this. And in fact, in my mind, it turns public meetings into a bit of a show. And I believe that you don't do employee discussions in public meetings. In fact, in our charter, we delegate personnel management to the first selectman, and we do have some rights around that. I will acknowledge that. It's very similar to what we had with the superintendent, in that we delegated to that, and we always had a policy on the Board of Ed that the board would not engage on overruling the senior official of our town unless it was governed by some sort of overriding document like a union contract or something where there was a right of appeal. In this case, there is no such right of appeal to this board, so I don't think this board should be engaging on that in this environment. And when we did do it, we did it in executive session because the sensitivity of personnel matters is something that should be held as a private discussion. I'll just say also, in this case, the employee has engaged legal services. And so that says it may be going down the legal route. And in that respect, airing details in public actually undermines the town's legal process. And so it's just not something you should be doing in good practice. So for these reasons, and with deepest respect for Fern Smenyak, who I've counted as a friend over many years, I think we should not be debating that or discussing these personnel matters at this session. But I will comment that there are those out there who say you need more transparency, and I understand that. I get it. And Steve, you need to be more public about. You need to be first more straightforward when this is Smenyak on why she was terminated. There's no doubt in my mind that's a meeting you need to have with her, either the two of you or your councils, however you do it. But I think, forget what everyone else in this room is. Let me finish.
Let me say one thing right
there.
No. I did offer Ms. Smenyak a meeting with me.
You're now interrupting.
She declined not.
Okay, see, now you're interrupting me. So, I believe first and foremost that the discussion, any discussion on the reasons for the termination, is really a discussion that does need to happen between the individuals involved and potentially their councils. But you know what? You've got, and these always have the situation where you've got very capable labor counsel. I think you've worked with labor counsel. And you need to listen to his advice, right? In everything you do. So if the town is very interested in the whys. In fact, the lack of whys is causing people to make up reasons why, right? That may or may not be true. In fact, I doubt they are true. But it is running rampant, and so there's a moment where we need to actually communicate, what the reasons were. But that may not be this moment in this meeting. So I just urge the parties to get together and work your way through this. And if you've got, and I'm guessing there is desires on both sides, and if can't reach a reasonable conclusion, then I think the lawyers will help guide us to the proper avenues to pursue. I do not believe this is something we should be doing in a public meeting, and if we do it at a public meeting, it ought to be an executive session. Until such a time that we can appropriately disclose it with right advice from counsel. So that's my point of view here.
Did you know about it, Bob?
Just to clarify, you can't go in executive session to discuss Ms. Smenyak.
Without Ms. Smenyak being able to attend, correct?
She can require that it be held in open session.
Okay. She can. Then I wouldn't do it.
There you go.
And certainly not at this moment. Now, yes, did I know about it? I knew that Steve was going to take the action, but when I was interviewed by the press and they asked me, did you know? My answer to the press was he had not at that time formally notified us of a termination. And Steve had called me and said, I think I'm going to take this action, but it was not it hadn't been done, and I hadn't been formally, neither you or I had been formally communicated on that. So yes, I knew it informally, but I didn't know it formally.
And you knew the reasons?
I'm aware of some of the reasons. I don't know all of the reasons.
So at what point will I be cued in on the reasons as a member of this board? Or am I not privy to that?
You should be privy to.
Thank you.
We can have that discussion at some time in the future, but not right now.
We can go to executive session tonight.
No. Well, you can make a motion to go into
We're all
executive
here.
session.
Ms. Simoniak's here.
Do you wish to make a motion to go into executive session?
I move that we move to executive session.
Do I have a second?
Again, I'll just tell you that she can require it to be held in an open meeting, not that she gets invited in. So if you agree to go into executive session,
It's just
it'll
the three
actually
of
be
us.
an open meeting. No,
Wait, I'm sorry, say that again?
if you're going into an executive session to discuss Fern Smenyak, she can actually say, no, have it in an open meeting. She has the right to request that it be private. If she doesn't want it to be private, then you will have the discussion in front of everybody.
She just said she doesn't want to have it private.
You asked for what?
I'm just advising the Board of Selectmen that if they vote to go into executive session, they then have to consult you. And if you say you want it to be public, then that's what it's gonna be. So a yes vote will result in a public discussion, I guarantee you.
I'm not in favor of that.
And just for the record, I was told, my attorney was told that I was not allowed to be involved in any discussions regarding my termination.
What was the source of his information?
I'm sorry?
What was the source of his or her information?
From Mr. Dunn.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that your lawyer wasn't telling you advice that I'm different than what I just gave.
So how do I get to the information then? Because I'd like to know the reason why she was terminated.
When this is all settled, I'm more than willing to have a discussion with you. But right now, we could face possible legal consequences. Ms. Maniak hasn't hired an attorney. The town needs to protect itself and to act on what is best for the town itself. So I'm still not willing to have this conversation in public.
So why is this on the agenda?
That was my question.
Our labor attorney asked us to put it on there. He said that is the best thing to do. Everything that we're doing it on the advice of our legal counsel, and I'm gonna follow our legal counsel because they're very, very good.
So tonight I heard her ask you, or not necessarily Fern, but others to reinstate her position. Is that something you're willing to do or consider?
Not at this time, no. No.
You are kidding me.
So is there a separation agreement or some kind of contract or something? Because if so, that should have been on the agenda as well.
There was an offer to Ms. Menyak. She declined to accept that offer. She has a copy of that. She can share it with anyone she wants.
So what is it? It's a contract or an agreement or what?
It's a separation agreement. And if Ms. Menyak wants to share it with you, she's more than welcome to.
Well, if it's an agreement, shouldn't that be on the consent agenda?
It was an offer. Nothing has been, no action has been taken on it.
So is that a public document?
Yeah, you can see that, right, Tom? I think anybody could see that if they want to see it. Right?
I'd have to look at that.
It's a personnel, it's on one of those personnel things.
Yeah, it's got confidentiality between Steve.
Both
and-
parties.
and
Between the town and
the lawyers.
Ms.
This is one of those reasons I say that these sorts of things, the lawyers have to be involved in advising both sides, and why there's a lot of nuance in these discussions. And I think that it probably would be better to have you and Mrs. Menyak and the two councils sit down together and talk this through. That would be, to me, that's in any employment matter, that's what you do. That's what you do. I would hate to have, I'm just thinking about my own personal things. If I had a job and I was terminated, I would be appalled to have it at some sort of public board meeting before I had a chance to go have a one-on-one conversation, even if I had lawyers involved, right? It's just, it's a show, right? As opposed to something that really gets you to the types of resolutions you'd like.
Yeah, I agree. I have made an offer to Ms. Benyak to sit down and talk to me. She has declined to do that and hired attorney.
That's
So
okay. That
okay.
happens.
That's
And
fine.
she has an attorney now, so
Yeah.
now go do it with the attorneys if you have to.
Right,
I mean,
exactly.
it's a very simple discussion.
Have you fired anybody else from town hall?
Yes,
This year?
not this year. I'm sorry, did you say this year?
Not yet?
No.
Oh,
I have no plans to.
in your past you have.
And once,
Mr. Leverance, right?
yeah. I dismissed our Director of Finance at the time,
May he rest in
8 years
peace.
ago. 8 years ago? Yeah,
He was
8
not
years ago.
He was not reappointed more than.
Well, more to the point, I did not reappoint him.
Because there was a procedure in place for that termination? Like, what is the process?
Well, that position is appointed. Ms. Menyax is not. I
Right.
declined to reappoint Mr. Leverance to the position.
Because, I mean, was there a
Again,
cause?
I'm not going to discuss personnel issues in public, and that's what I said then, and I'm going to stick to that. That is just as much to preserve the rights of individuals as it is to protect the town.
Well, I think it was a terrible decision, and it seems strangely very politically motivated.
You can think that, that's not true, but again, I'm not going to discuss it in public.
One of your best employees, she worked for you for 6 years with an impeccable record, untarnished, nothing in her file. For me, for 2 years, for this, with no errors, nothing, there were no discrepancies in her performance. And on day 3 of your new term, you decide to fire her. Oh, and by the way, it was a few hours before the first sunset of Hanukkah. Heartless.
Bob, do you have any further comments?
I have no further comments.
I don't either. Do you have anything else you would like to cover?
Terrible decision.
So, having covered that issue, I make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 There is no motion on the floor.
No.
Yeah, no, she made a
Oh,
motion
I'm
to
sorry.
go into
Let's go
executive
back.
session.
It wasn't seconded.
It wasn't seconded, no.
It's seconded, so it's not a motion. Okay. Thank you, everybody.